We're back, and it's Comp 2007, and it's week 10, lesson 10, part 3. And when we last left off, our brave adventurers were actually here. Yes, we were actually trying to get this going, this piece here, which is to take away the error that we had. We need a few more pages, guys. We need a register page, but we also need to configure our login a little bit more carefully. So let's get out of this and go into my login, and I'm going to go into my source code now again. And if you notice my login itself, if I click onto it, and if I go to properties and I pin the tail here, right? I have a bunch of different options here. For example, my border style, I have my border padding. I can add in some basic things. I don't recommend any of this stuff, by the way, for styling. Only because we want to try and use Bootstrap for this later on. Okay. So here's our login button text, which is login. A login button type, which is a button. You can also make it other things, like an image or a link, if you wanted to. Membership provider, we're not going to touch. Orientation is vertical. You can also make it so that the orientation is horizontal for our login, right? If you log in for a horizontal thing itself, right? Our password recovery icon URL or text or URL, we don't have that right now. We're not going to add it in just this moment. Password is required is going to be our error message if we don't put a password in there. Remember me set is going to be false. We don't want to remember, right? Remember me text, if you want to click on remember me for the next time, we can put that on or off or take it away. Render outer table, we say true. We can take this off. If we take the outer table away, we may need to do this before we convert. You'll see why later on. Text layout is text on left. Title text is login, right, for this special page. Title text style and so on. And one of the things that you notice here, if you see all these piece parts to it, is that these are all things that we can change. Right? I just want to mention this stuff because, just in case you decide to do this. Now, also, if you notice, there's a couple of other options here, which is auto format. If I go to auto format, you could choose these lovely designs from the past, right? Like this design here, which is done with tables, and so is this one, and so is this one, and this one, and this one. They're all done with tables, but we don't want tables. Tables be ugly, right? And tables be bad. They're old, like 2005, maybe even older than that. So we want to eventually convert to template, but for now, let's leave it as is. That's the first thing I need. Okay, next thing. If I go to my toolbox, I have some other nice little things in here, right? Like, for example, I have my input. I have my, oh, sorry, that's not it. My login, I meant. I have a couple of other things here. I have my password recovery. If I want to make a password recovery page, I can make a link to my password recovery, right? I have a login name as an example as well, login name. I also have this, create user wizard, which I want to use when we create our register password, register link. Okay, so we're going to have a register link, for creating a user wizard, right? Now, so let's create our register page. So I'm going to go back to our register page here. Now, you can call this page sign up. If I was to follow the process, I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint presentation here, which I'm going to share with you later on. Right? And if here's my PowerPoint from week 10. We're kind of partway through kind of the walkthrough of how to do stuff. And this PowerPoint tells you basically what we've been doing this whole time. So if you were to follow along on your own, it shows you the stuff for the master pages, how to set it up, give you an example of what it looks like. I ask you to kind of create dashboard here in this layout here. I'm probably not going to make a dashboard this time around, but you certainly could use that as a simple way of doing this. Login status is what we put in earlier, and then we put in our login on top of that, right? And then if you notice, we have a couple of other properties here we want to kind of add in. One of them is destination page, right? Destination page URL, which would be where we're going to go. And this destination page URL is when if we have when we log in, where does it take us? I want it to take us to our to-do app, right? That's our to-do app when we're logged in, right? So that's where the page that we're going to go to. So we don't have that right now, but we're going to probably call it to-dos. So let's add those little properties in there. So again, I have to click on to login. And I'm looking for destination page URL. That's the first one. So if I go back here, here's destination page URL. You can certainly drag one that already exists, right? I don't have one that exists, but I will create one later on. And we know it's going to be somewhere in another folder. So let's leave that alone, this destination page URL for now, right? We could add a placeholder of taking us back to our index page, right, and showing us that we're logged in. So I think that's probably a good choice for now. We can change this later. So I'm going to click on this, and it's going to take me back to my default .aspx page. So it's just going to show us that we're logged in. Okay. The other thing we're going to do is we need to create a user text for sign up for a new account, and the create user URL wherever it's going to go, right? So that's what it's called. Create user text is, I'm going to make it, instead of sign up for account, we're going to say register, right, if you're not registered. And my create user URL, we're going to make it so that it is register. So it's going to be this little funny symbol, right, the caret or whatever you want to call it, the little symbol, / and then the name of my website that's going to be called, we can call it sign up, which is very common on the online, or we can also call it register, right, .aspx, which is what we called called it in our link. Okay, if you notice, it adds more detail to my user control. You can also type it in here if you notice, right? I'm going to unpin this one. Okay, so this is what it actually looks like typed in. From a design perspective now, it looks like this, where you have a register link and you have a login link, right? Login link. We have to think about what it's going to do when we're logged in, if we need this link being shown or not. I'll talk about this later on. Right, but this is the kind of stuff that we have going on right now, where we have this little login with a register link. Okay, we need to make a register, so let's do that now. So we're going to go into Solution Explorer, and we're going to pin this up, and I'm going to do the same thing as I did last time. I'm going to add another register link. So I'm going to right-click on my project. I'm going to go Add, and I'm going to go Web Form with Master Page. We're going to call this thing Register. Press OK. And then click Default Master, and press OK. And there's our registration form, except we need something in the content and the placeholder here to actually do the registration. And we're going to take that from the toolbox, which I'm just going to just minimize this. Inside of our toolbox, it's actually called Create User Wizard. Create User Wizard. And if I drag and drop my Create User Wizard in here, it adds all this extra data in here, right? Create User Wizard. If I look at it on the design perspective, if I save it and look at it from a design piece, it looks like this. Username, password, confirm password, email, security question, so on. Right? That's what the design or the Create User Wizard looks like. Little form again. We will have to mash this up because this looks like crapola again, right? All right, so let's follow the PowerPoint here. So I've done this. I've done my Create User Wizard, right? I save and close the page, and I did all this stuff. Now we're good to go, right? So we've kind of done up to where I'm going to cover on the PowerPoint. Now it's watching the videos and doing stuff with me. Okay, so we've got this Create User Wizard, and that's our registration form. Before we do our login and log out, we want to test it locally. So let's try this out. So I'm going to kind of click on my default ASPX here and have that clicked. I'm going to just close down these files temporarily for now, all of them, just so that way I can show you that I'm just clicked on my default ASPX file, and I'm going to press Run, or run with debugging from Chrome here. And I should see this. I've got my two toolbars, and I want to log in. So I click my login button, take us to log in. And if I notice I got this registration page here, because I don't have a registration, I'm going to make my own name. So it takes me to my registration, right? So I can register my username. So let's call myself Tom. How about that? And my password is, my regular, really weird password. And again, and my email, Tom at, let's say, example.com, right? And then press Create User. When I do that, right, it's going to do its thing, and if everything goes well, it actually physically creates the database for us, right? Let me show you that database. So actually, there's a database that's just created. I'm not gonna remember this. And if I click continue, look at this. This is a thing that I'm missing. It doesn't do anything right now. It doesn't go anywhere, right? Actually, it took me back to I'm registered, but I'm not logged in. I should be kind of into my to-do page, right? So my to-do list is where I want to go. For now, let's use my continue to take us back into my my home page, my indexed or my default ASPX. So that's one change I have to make. So I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to go to I'm going to stop debugging. I'm going to go to Solution Explorer, and I'm going to go to my register.aspx page right here. And inside of here, if I click on my wizard, and I go to my properties, and there's a long list of properties that are here, but one of them that I want to hit is my continue button. So here's my continue button image. Make this a little larger for you guys to see. And here's my my type, and here's my continued destination page URL, which I want to put in here. Right? So I'm going to kind of put this in here, and just, you know, I want to, for now, I'm just going to indicate that it's going to be my default page, just my first page. So my default ASPX page. When I make a new register a new user, they go there for now. And if you notice, all this does, this big mess, it all just adds in this continue destination page URL, and default ASPX gets added in there. If you notice the wizard steps, there's different things you can configure here as well. Like, for example, create user wizard step, and there's these two wizard steps that are made. Wizard step 1, the create and the complete, they do different things. So if I go back into properties, if you notice, it says I can enable theming. I can, where I run at the server, I can also put in sign up for your new account for the title. I don't want that. I just want it. I want to call it register. Right? To make sense. So that's the title. And when I go to complete and I go to properties, the title is complete. So I'll say, instead of complete, I'll call it registration complete. Right? To kind of make it a little bit better. Also, you know what? Our page title, we have to kind of fix that with the other pages too. I want to make this kind of register. Here's our register page. That's one thing I want to add in there. So that's our registration page. Let me go back in to do my Solution Explorer and go into my login page. And I forgot to add that in here too. So I'll put login in here, in my login. Okay, let's see what I got now. I'm going to kind of stop this and go back in here. I'm going to register another user. Let's try this out. So I'm going to go in, I run, I'm into my login, and if I click register, actually, let's see if it takes me to register. Right, it does. Here's register, right? So this link works now. So I got my link working, and in my register, I'm going to say again, you know, let's say J Smith, right? My password. And my email address, jsmith@example.com, and press create user. Now it should take me back to my default page. Let's see if that does that. And it should say up here, it should go to, when I say nope, it should take me to, when I click continue, it should take me to my default page. Yeah? So that's good, that works, that functionality is good now. Yeah?
Is there a configuration that you missed because when we click create user, it doesn't go anywhere?
It crashes eventually.
I'll have to go check you out on a break, but yeah, you have to definitely add in your providers. That's the one thing you need, and the other thing you need to put in is because what it does, it creates all that stuff that I was putting in. When your providers are put in there, and if you actually put in one piece you need, yeah. By the way, all the problems are in your web config. I guarantee you. So if I go stop debugging, hold on, Cody. And if I go to Solution Explorer, and if I go to Web Config, two pieces you need to make this work, to register or do all these things. One is, of course, you need your all your profile, default provider, and blah, blah, blah. All that's taken from the when we added in our providers, right? If you don't add in providers in your, that's bad. The other thing is authentication mode has to be forms. That has to be in there. And this app settings has to be what we put before. Those two things got to be in there in order for us to make this go.
I got that stuff. That doesn't work.
So there's something you're missing. that you did. I'll go around and check with you and make sure you got everything. But you can also look at GitHub, because GitHub is where I got everything uploaded. You can always check, compare your files with mine. I'm just going to, just for now, because I made some changes, I'm going to go to Team Explorer, and I'm going to go Home, I'm going to go Changes, and I'm going to say Added Register Page. Here's my register page, commit. And I'm going to go Home, and I'm going to go Unsync Commits and Sync. So you should be able to see COMP2007 Lesson 10 Part 1. You should be able to see it on GitHub. All my changes are up there now. Okay. So now that I've got these pages going, right, my web config is configured correctly. I'm almost where I want to be. Almost. I want to add a couple more pages in here before I move on. So here's my register page. Well, let's go back to that problem that I had with my global style, right, which was my default master. So if I go here to my default master, can I see users now, right? So if I go if, user, oh, look how user comes up now, right? User does come up now. If user dot, and if I say equals, right? And if I say, if it's not just user, but the idea for user being authenticated is another piece you can check, right? If my user is authenticated, then, right? And if I start typing authentication, right? Right, user authenticated or something like that. How do I check to see if my user is authenticated, right? Or if my user is logged in, or anything like that? I gotta be able to check that. Because I want to be able to block, I want to do a couple things. I want to be able to block a page, right, if it loads. Like for example, let's say I don't want anybody who's not logged in to access my page. I can definitely, yes, you figure it out?
Is it login status?
Login status, I could. That's my, login status is, it should be there already. That's part of the things I added in, right? But see how I'm not really getting a login status over here, right, yet? Because if I go to another page, let's say take this out here. If I go to another page, like for example, I know my login page or my default page, right? Here's my default ASPX page. Here it is, right? Which is my kind of my index, right? If I go into the code behind here, right to here, and if I type in, start typing if, my if statement, and then I go user, again dot, and I start doing down here, look what I get here. I get identity, which is what I need. User.identity, right? But I'm not getting user.identity over there, right? How come? Well, because here's, do I have different controls here? No. So let's follow this through. If user.identity, my page load, when my default page loads, right? If user.identity dot, right, is authenticated, right? This is on my default.aspx.cs page, my code behind page. Dot, right? So if that's true, if I'm authenticated, then what do I want to do? Well, I want to target my main, my public nav. Then, if I start typing public nav, I don't see this. How do I get to my public nav? Right? Because remember, where does it exist? It exists in my default, right? My default dot, no, that's not it. Default 1 dot, no, that's not it. I can't get to my public nav. I can't see my public nav. I can't target my public nav, right? I can't target my private nav either from here. Hey, here's something. So this is what I want. This if user identity is authenticated. I want this. What if I was just to take this whole line? Here's another thing. Go back to my default dot master, my master default page, default master, and I put that in page load. Does that work? If user identity, hold on. It says system web providers and tables does not contain a definition for identity. Let us see if I can find that, because I don't have that. I can't do a control dot, right? So could I put in my user, my user status, if you will, because that's what I need. Like we said before, I can't know if my user is, if my user logged in, right? Unless somewhere on the page I've dragged and dropped my control, my user control, right? So there's some tricks to this. If I go to my default page, my default master page, and it's got to be within the web form itself. So here's web form, and on the bottom, right? And I haven't put anything else in here, but we have our user that's going to show up, right? So let me just undo this thing so you can't see this. So here we have our logout here, but instead of putting this logout here inside of my class navbar right as a link, right? Just follow me here, right? What if I put in this other control, because it is part of my toolbox. I can go into my login status, right, and drag and drop this in there, right, and then from a properties perspective, kind of go down here, right, and my logout text is logout, right. If I want to see what my design looks like, right, I can't really do it because I don't have a logout, but there is a status for it. Let's go back to my source file. Because remember, I've done all this stuff. I'm doing all this stuff all at once, and it's buried inside this ASP.NET login status, right? So what's my solution? What's my property? Which property do I need to change, right? So here's my login image URL. Login text is login, right? Logout action is refresh, right? Remember, there's two ways you can do this. Logout texts, right, is logout. I'm running at the server. I'm inheriting, and my visibility right now is true. Let's leave it as is for now, because I want to. So enable view state, enable theming. All this stuff is there, right? I want to be able to go and change that later on. So let's see what if I save that with this control in place. When I go back into my default ASP thing, well, look what I got here, right? On page load, default ASPX is showing authenticated. That's good. But this is not what I want. I want this. If a user is authenticated, I want this piece here to come up in my CS master, right? So I'm going to kind of save this. And I'm not really seeing identity, right? So how do I add in identity? I wonder if I just type identity, right? Dot. I can't do that. Application identity. How do can I control tab that one? So again, something of something to check. Here's the other thing I want to check out. If I run the application as is right now, I run this thing, right? Just bear with me. Here I am. And look what it shows up here. I got my logout right here. Now I'm logged in, right? Otherwise, this one show logout, right? The only reason that's showing logout is because I'm still logged in because of cookies, right? So if I click log out, right, now it shows me log in. That's good. That's a good thing, right? This little link and stuff is now I have to format it. I have to fix it with text and so on. But that does work. That does log me out. That little link that I made. So it does keep track of my status, right? So I want to make it so that if this is the way I want to look at it. If I'm logged in, right, then I want to be able to do something. And also, you know what? I can also put in here something of a little message that goes on my link that says my user, what my username is right here, right? Something and then comma log in, all right? So let's go back to my default master page, and I'm just going to unpin this stuff, and I'm going to stop debugging for a second. And if you notice, here's my login status. I gotta style this thing right now because my style is pretty poor, right? And what's the way to style this thing? What would you think the way to style this thing is for Bootstrap? What do I do? Best way to do it, if I would recommend, is a span tag, right? That's what I would recommend. So let's put a span tag in here, right? We still pull it, or we put it in a list item still. We put it in a list item. Here's my list item, right? Because it's inside of an li tag. Remember, it's going to get styled automatically. And let's see what it does now. If I run this thing now, it's inside of a list item. Does it do what I want it to do? Right? Yeah, it does. It kind of puts it in the right position. That's good. Okay. Another thing I want to put in here is another list item that comes before this one. So here's my LI list item. And inside the list item, I'm going to go into my, stop debugging again. I'm going to go into my toolbox here. And I'm going to go into login, or login name, and pull that in there too. So here's my ASP.NET login name as a link. Now it's going to say it's going to kind of show my login name, and it's a list item, but it's a non-link list item. So it's going to kind of it might come up too dark in my inverse nav bar, right? And then maybe what I also want to put in there is kind of comma, like comma, welcome, kind of a statement like welcome, so on. Or howdy. Remember that, like on WordPress, howdy, comma, and the name. Right? Let's see how this looks when I do this. I run it. When I'm logged in on my login bar, right? And I'm not logged in right now, so that's why it's not showing it. But let's say I log in. I'm going to put my name in there. So Tom, and then, did I do it right? There we go. And then log in. When I do that, hey man, what happened to my other text in there? Is it there? Well, it's there, but you can't see it. How come? How come it's not styled properly and it's way out here? Because even though I've put it in a list item and it's there, it's not a link, right? So remember, my link got to be styled properly. I don't want to click on Howdy Tom, right? I don't want to click that at all. I could put it in the same list item as my other option, like make it as 1. So if I click 1, I click log out, but I don't really want that, right? So it does keep track of who I am. What's the way to do it in Bootstrap where I have non-link text that's inside my link? How do I do that? There is a way of taking care of that. If you don't remember how to do that, so I go to, you can go to Get Bootstrap, and if I go to CSS, and if I go to, it might be typography, where I want to kind of use non-link text. Inline text element, deleted, strike through this, small text, bold, italics, alignment classes, transformation classes, and it might not be here. It could be under my my nav bar, which is an item. So let's go back in there on the top. But it's a non-link text, so components, and I want to go down to navs or nav bar, and I want non-link text on my nav bar. How do I do that? Here it is. Texts, right? So navbar text. That's my class that I put in here. So let's try that out. So in my LI, my list item, I put a class. Well, that's equal to navbar dash text. That's important to put in there, right? So I'm just fixing my stuff up here. And now when I go back here and refresh, then it's there. Howdy Tom. Log out, right? That's kind of what we push that. So this is the bar that I really want, but I don't want to show this bar. I want to kind of hide this one when this one's showing. Could make my own custom CSS. I could say but I'm able to somehow be able to detect. How can I detect what this bar is called? Well, remember, I have my placeholder text. I could make it a class, right? So I have an ID from my text. So let's go back to this. Remember how we did it last time? And if I go to my default master.cs, this is where I wanted to see it. But my default master right here, inside the top of my my placeholder, I could also put in a class. So I got my ID. If I want to target it with stuff, if I put in class, will that work? What can I do with my placeholder text? And if you don't know what to do, I'm going to stop here and go to properties. If you notice, I have my ID. That's my private nav. That's actually the ID that I get things. So I should be able to I should be able to access private nav the way I've written it inside my CS file, right? Because I have a placeholder, it's a placeholder, some kind of a wrapper, if you will, for my stuff, and it's inside my forms document. I'm running at the server, so there's public nav and private nav, and if I go back to my default master, right, I should be able to kind of access it here. So if I go to, you know, private nav, see, I can access it here. I can say private nav, and what I want to say is my private nav by default on page load, right, visibility, visible, oops, not view state, visible, right, is false, right? That's on view state. So when my private nav, when my page loads, my visibility is false. But if I'm logged in, right? How do I detect if I'm logged in? That's the check. That's the challenge here, right? I got to be able to detect if I'm logged in, right? Now, luckily, I have. And what about if I want to protect my main page, so I can't even go there unless I'm logged in? How do I protect that one page? What do I do, right? So let's say I want to protect my default master. That's easy. My default ASPX page. I can check to see if the user is authenticated. And if it is, if he's not authenticated, right? Well, then I can do a response. I can do a response redirect, right, to where I want to go, right? Where's the string? So I want to say, well, if I'm not authenticated, you know what? You can't even go to your main page. It's going to take you to login. It's going to go to login.aspx. Okay. So if I'm not authenticated, I can do this in my main page by, you know, kind of protecting my page, right? And if I run this now, and here's my default ASPX. If I run this, it takes me. I'm not authenticated, right? So what I'm hoping to do is, if it works, right, then it should take me to my main page. Now, remember what's happening here. Look what's happened. My default page, I log out. I am authenticated. It doesn't show me that I'm authenticated. So look what happens now that I'm not authenticated. If I want to go to my main page, right, so if I want to go to this, so I want to get rid of that bar, right, then it takes me back here. So that's how I can protect the page. I can check to see if my user is authenticated, and if I'm not, then I'm going to go back to the page. But how do I access this other data? How do I access that other bar? So there are a couple ways to do this thing, right? If I'm in my main default page, I take the bar out of my master page, right? I could do that and put it in my default page, right? So I don't have my bar in my master page. I could do that. And that means I have to be careful, because that means only depending on how I set up the way I do things, I can have another master page altogether. That's another way I could do it for when I'm logged in, and I can have one that when I'm not logged in. So depending on what I'm doing, I can call for a different page. So for example, pages that I'm logged in would be my to-do list, right? So if I'm logged in my to-do list, it'll show me my name. I could do it that way too. But if I included it in my default page, that's good. If I only have home, about, and contact us, what I would have to do it there as well to replicate that thing over and over again, right? So that's kind of a pissy thing to do. I got to be able to access my stuff somehow. How do I do it? So for now, right, as an example, when I log into my default master, I can make my private nav visible as false by default. But again, what I really want to do is say something like, on page, when my page loads, if my user is authenticated, right? And there's another thing I can do. Here's something else. I've added into my default master, way at the bottom, just as a test, right? What if I add in its own control? If you notice in my second placeholder, my private nav, my login name, right? Here's my login name as a control. I've got a login name of 1, login name 1, right? Could I check this out to see if my login name is there? Does it exist, right? See if that works. So I can say, well, let's see if login name 1. I have access to login name 1, right? So I could check to see if that's void. If there's no login name, right, then I'm not logged in. And if I'm not logged in, right? So how do I show what my login name is? How do I create an alert or something that I can see what I'm going to, right? Could I do a console.log? I couldn't do that. How about a console.print screen? I don't have any console commands I can use here, right? It's not the same. How about an alert? Can I do an alert? No. What can I do? I could put some text. I can throw some text somewhere. I could do that. I could change a div tag, right? I could, so as a message, some kind of label, right, that I can create as some troubleshooting. So let's try this anyway. So let's say if my login name, right, and again, this is different things that I can do here. So let's say my login name 1. Oh, look at this. If login status, this is good. Login status, right, dot, and I go is equals to, well, let's, and how do I check if it's login status? What's my login status? If login status is true, right? And if I hover over this thing, it says detects the user's authentication state, right? And toggles the state of a link to log in to or log out of a website, right? So if login status is equal to true, maybe. Now it doesn't tell me what I'm. It says system.web.ui web controls login status is a type, but is used like a variable. So I can check to see if this this type is equal to true. I could do that. Let's see if that works. But then if you notice, if that was true, if I just say login status true or false or authenticated, right? I can't do that, and user doesn't give me, any kind of status. So let's check that out. So if I was going to check it out, so checking login status, ASP.NET, login status, control example, right? And that's not what I really wanted. I don't know how that got me there. That was weird. ASP.NET login status. That's really what I wanted. Look, that's weird, eh? IPv4. Please create this condition before. Is it you guys getting this? For Google?
You get it when you search too many things that are random.
I'm not searching too many things that are random. Login status. Login status for ASP.NET. ASP.NET. And I get this. Are you guys getting this?
What if you type in the caption?
Sure, man. That's weird. I never understood that, but anyways, whatever. How to detect login status. Detect login status for ASP.NET. Checking login status. There we go. If logged in is equal to do something, that's what you want, and you want to do this: http context.current.user identity. What an ugly statement this is, eh?
Yeah.
HTTP. I'm going to just copy and paste this piece. What a piece of crap that is. Let's go back into our thing here. So this is what I want, right? I want to kind of do one of those. Is authenticated. If he's authenticated, right? If he's not authenticated, right, then I want to make my private nav false, right? I want to make my private nav false. However, if he is authenticated, else, right? If he's authenticated, then I want my private nav to be visible, to be true, right? And I also want to make this just in case I switch between two modes, I want to make my public nav dot visible is equal to true, just to make sure, and my public nav dot visible is equal to false when I'm not authentic when I'm authenticated. Let's check that out and see if that works. Because that would be a pain in the ass if we had to do all that work for nothing. Okay, cool. Now, I'm not authenticated, right? So if you notice, it gives me register and log in. See? And if I go log in, then it takes me back to my login page. This is good prep work. I go Tom, and then, you know, and if I'm logged in, if I log in, it takes me back to my login page, which is here, right? And it shows me that I'm logged in. If I log out, it takes me back to log in and register, right? So that all works now. So it shows me my page, huh? And that's the right thing to do. Cool, huh? That little stupid. Oh, come on. Of course I can. It's this stupid code here, not HTTP context current user identity. It says authenticated because I don't have access to identity because I don't have access to that current user.
Yep.
I just couldn't remember what it was. Okay, so we've got this piece, right? Now I want to add in my to-do list finally. For the last bit, I want to do this to-do list. How do I add it in? Well, we want to create an entity, right? But before we go there, right? Warning: if you want to create something on Azure, now's the time. And this is the trick. Remember, I told you it took long. So we did all this work, right? Now I want to make sure that Azure works. Because if Azure doesn't work, this is all out the window, right? So what do we do? Well, let's kick off Azure for a second. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go manage windowsazure.com. And in my Azure, I'm going to create, and I've already done this, so you're going to see a COMP2007 security site, but I'm going to call it something else now. So, because this is just my labs that I use. See, I have, if I go to web apps, right, web apps, I'll have my COMP2007 security, right? So I don't want that. I want to create a new one for you guys to show you how it's done. So I'm going to say kind of a new one, right? I want to click create. And I want to make my new thing called something like Comp 2007 lesson 10. Something that's a little bit weird. I'll create my web app. Okay, so when I create my web app, it's a container for what I'm going to shoot up on the web. That's what I want it to go. But the trick is I need to link it into an empty database. Okay. To link it into an empty database because I want to be able to take that database, work with it, right, later on, right, add entity framework and all that stuff, right? So where do I do that? I'm going to go into SQL databases, which I only have one, COMP 2007 security. I'm going to add another one. So I'm going to go new database. I'm going to create new. And I'm going to use the same server. It doesn't have to be the same one. I'm going to use the same server, this East US. You can make your own if you want, using Azure Pass. I'm going to call this the same name, Comp 2007 Lesson 10. There it is, Lesson 10. That's the database name. And you can create whatever you want. So I have to choose my server. That would be good. And then click this. Now my server's already been created, so I know what it is. You can use a server that's already been made. You can certainly use a server that's that was made from before. And that's taking up 250 gigabytes of space. It's creating my database, and I have to wait until it's done, right? If I don't wait till it's done, then I won't have access to it, and I can't link it, right, to my site. So I'm going to wait a little bit longer until this is all taken care of. So for you, this is what you should do as well. When you deploy, we're going to use our publish button on Microsoft Azure, and we're going to deploy our database, from Azure. We're also going to, what I also want to try and do as well is, and again, this is 250 gigabytes. I wonder if that's the issue. From a thing perspective, just refresh here and see if it's actually created yet. Sometimes you need to do that on the school side. Yeah, there we are. So it's online. Okay. Now what I want to do here, one thing I do want to do with this is, if you notice the path name, it's the same path name as the other database, right? But one is called COMP 2007 Lesson 10, and the other one is called something else. Let me configure this thing, right, or scale it. I can scale it down. I want to make it, instead of from standard, I want to go to basic. It's too big, right? And I want to save my changes. So I want to scale down my database to 2 gigs, right, because it's too big. And I want to go back out to, I also want to burn all my credits, right? So now if you notice, it's going to go to standard, or it's going to go to basic in a second. It's going to refresh and wait for that to happen as it's retooling itself, paring itself down until it's basic instead of standard, which is what I wanted. There it is, 2 gigs, right? Okay, so it's in the same database as my other one, but I'm going to choose COMP 2007 lesson 10. Yours could be called something else. Okay, so I've got my database. Now, for my prep work, I want to link my site, right? This new site that I'm making, which, by the way, is not showing up nicely. Let's refresh my web apps. So I got security. That's not what I want. I want another one. I guess it can't be the same name as my servers. I try to make it the same name. Let's add a new one. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make any sense to me, but I'll say create new name. I'll just call it COMP 2007. Probably won't be allowed because you probably did it already somewhere out there. But let's just try it out there and see what happens. Okay, so there it is. Azure Pass. It's being made, right? And when it's done being created, right? When it's finished, here it is running. I want to link this thing. Right now it has no link. So if I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to go to link resources, right? And if it says no link resource, I'm going to link a resource, and I'm going to link an existing resource, which is my SQL database. And of course, I'm going to link. There's 2 of them. There's lesson 10 and there's security. I'm going to link the one I just created, lesson 10. I've got my login information there. I'm going to press complete. And then I need to wait for the resource to link. When the resource is linked, it's going to say resource linked successfully, like this. Right? See how it says linked? Now that it's linked with a database, doesn't mean that I have anything else. It's still empty. Database is empty, right? I got to do all my work now on Visual Studio. So let's go back to Visual Studio. I'm going to stop debugging. I'm going to go to Server Explorer. I'm going to pin this up. I'm going to look at Azure, and let me just kind of kill some of these things because I don't need them right now. Okay, and I'm going to look at SQL databases, and I should see 2, right? You should probably see 1 or more. There's my COMP 2007 lesson 10. The other one was what I did earlier as a test that I struggled on, right? I'm going to choose this one. Right-click, and I'm going to open up in SQL Server Object Explorer. That's my quick way of creating my link, right? So here's my database, right, as an example, and I got to authenticate. Oops. And I remember my password here, and I'm going to press connect. When it does this, it's going to create a connection for my database. And there it is, right? Now I have 2 databases here, right? I have one of them. There's 2 connections. One of them is COMP 2007 lesson 10. That's one of my connections. And the other one is COMP 2007 security. They're both in the same database. Now, dangerous, but it's there. If you notice on my COMP 2007 lesson 10, I don't have a table right now. I have nothing. And I'm mentioning this because when I deploy my web app, you're going to see a change that comes over me. Right? My table is going to appear, right? Right now my table is under here. It's under my web pro. It's a local server in my local DB. That's how it's keeping track of my username and password and all that stuff, right? So obviously there's no tables in there right now. Okay, so let's deploy. Let's go into Solution Explorer, and I'm going to pin this up here for a second. We'll let this do its thing. And I'm going to right-click on my project, and I'm going to click Publish. And when I do, I'm going to click Microsoft Azure Web App right here. And now I can select. It's going to pick from a list of web apps that exist. One of them is COMP 2007, just the main one, not the other one. You can choose the one that makes sense for you. And then I'm going to press OK. It's going to take me to this connection string that shows me my COMP 2007 websites. If I click Validate Connection, it'll check to see if my connection is OK. If I can't validate my connection, that might mean that I can't access my web app from my location. I've already opened up the ports and did all that stuff we did before on the database, so I can do this. If you're at home, you should be fine. Sometimes when you're at school, it blocks you. I'm going to go next. And if you notice, here's my new data source, right? It says, here's my database, and if you notice, tells me a few of my piece of information, right? And my COMP2007. I'm going to click next, and I'm going to press publish as an example. And when I do, if everything goes well, it should take not only my website, but also my stuff for identity and throw it up on Azure. Let's see what happens. Look where it takes me. It takes me to login, right? Because that's what I programmed it to do. Okay, let's check to see if I can log in. Can I log in with my credentials? Like, for example, Tom and my password. What would you say? Can I log in or no? No. If I click login, it's going to say, man, there's no user of that name. It will give me an error, right? It'll try its hardest. But if you notice, it's trying to log in. There is no user with Tom. It doesn't have a database, so it might even error out. Let's see what happens. Now, there. Your login attempt is not successful. Please try again. So now, I'm going to click my register. I can click here for register. I can also click here for register. Either way, I'm fine. I can go to my registration. Now I'm going to log in for the first time. So Tom, my password. Oh. Same thing. And my email address, tom@example.com. Right? And press create user. Now if I've done everything correctly, right, and it should take me here. And I'm going to click continue, and that should take me to my home page, which it does. Now, let's take a look at what Azure's done from a user table perspective. Because now I'm here, right, and I'm logged into my table. I'm just going to close this up and open it up again, close this up and open that up again, and just do a refresh, right? Because I want to refresh my tables to see what the hell did we just do. How many tables do you think were added in? And this is a key step here. Do not do your, look at the tables. Do not do your entity framework first, because your authentication creates something called default connection in your web.config file. And if you make a default connection for your entity framework, it's going to clash with the default connection with this connection stuff, this authentication piece. So then, when we make our entity framework, we're going to create our database first now. We're going to make another connection string name, right? Otherwise, we're going to have a problem. It's going to clash. So this is the web. So I'm giving you the process to make this all work. Remember, I told you it's a bit of a rigmarole. This is why, right? Let's check this out. So here's my tables. I want to add a new table. And now this is where we're going to create our to-do app. Right? We're going to do our to-do app. And your job after today, we're going to make a to-do app so we log in, we get our to-dos, and if you log in, you get my to-dos. You can register yourself and everything else. The whole thing, everyone will log in and get everyone's to-dos, right? Your job after today is, how do you make this thing so that when you log in as Tom or John or whoever, you only get John's to-dos? How do you connect that database together? What's your thinking there? So I don't think we'll have time to do it in class, right? Just from a timing perspective. And you can see this is a long process. I'm rushing as much as I can. I got to wait for Azure here, right?
While you're doing that, mine was taking forever to load, but after I opened it up into Server Explorer, I couldn't catch up with what you did after that.
Over here, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if I go to, I can't do anything right now. She kind of locked me out. I got to be patient and wait. And sometimes it does this with Azure. It's the connection, right, with the tables and everything else. But the good thing is, if I go back to my web app, it's fully functional. Like this web app now does work. I don't have a to-do list yet. So if I go here, it's going to take me to a page that I don't have. To-dos, default, ASPX. I want to create that. I want to scaffold that out, just like we did last time. I can't scaffold it out without a model, right? I can't create a data model without a table. I got to create my table, man. No table, no model. Right, and that's why I'm waiting for over here. And here we go. So let's try this out. So I'm going to call this the to-dos table, or to-do. Watch, but I want to make a single, kind of a singular, to-do. Right? My to-do table. All right? And inside my to-do table, I have an ID. And if I'm going to go to properties here, I want to make sure that my ID is of identity is true, which means it's going to be a auto-incrementing key. I need to do that or else it will not be auto-incrementing. And then I'm going to add in a couple of to-dos. What's my to-do? What would it be? Description? I would have a description of my to-do, right? That's about it. Description of my to-do. Anything else? How about details? To-do details, like maybe some like kind of short description, and then a a text area with more detail of what I have to do, kind of thing, almost like an order list, right? So we'll call it to-do name. That's one thing that would be there, right? And my name is going to be pretty long. I want to make it so it's varchar max. I want to choose a varchar max, so it's pretty long. And I don't want to make it so it can't be null. I want to make it so that it has to be there, right? And I'm also going to make a description, so name and description. And my description is going to be varchar max again. Varchar max. And you know what? But my description, you know what? Can be null. I'll leave if you want to not put a description in there, like anything else other than the name, I'm good. It's your option. I'll give you an option to do that. Okay, so there's only two things in my table. So I'm just going to update my table now. I've got everything I need. How about this? The other thing is my user ID. That would be something like a foreign key, right? How do I do that? And that's what I would have to put in here. I would have to put in like a user or user ID, right? User ID. And this one, I mean, it's going to be an ID, like an int, as an example, right? So I could leave it as is. I want to make it a foreign key, though. So what do I do in SQL to make it a foreign key? Anybody remember? You guys don't remember a thing.
I know we had to add something at the end. I can't remember exactly what it is, though.
I'm going to put it in here. We can always change the model later. So I'm going to put it in as an integer, right? So I'm going to go int. It's not it, though. You have to put something else in here as a foreign key, right? And I could put a default in there or whatever. See how it says foreign key 0, right? I can put add new foreign key, right? And now I have to choose which foreign key to table I'm putting it into. And for the way I would do that, of course, is I want to put it in so that if you notice in my users, right? This is where the key is, right? Look at this constraint: foreign key to do table, foreign key column, references in my to do table, in my table to table, from key column to table, right? So remember, here's my users column, and I can't really see it right now because it's cycling, but that's how I would do it. I would put it in. I would kind of install it that way. All right. So let's take a look at view data, right? So you kind of get an idea of what it looks like. It's going to take me forever to do this, and I may not be able to finish in time. Yay, so what do I have? I have a user ID, right? I have an application ID. I have a user name, right? I have a username is anonymous, is false, and last activity date. That's what I get. So username is probably cool. I could probably base it on username. If it's Tom, so instead of an integer, it'll be a username. So it'll be a username is the actual table, and it's in the DBO users table. So users and then username. Okay, so that's cool. So that's what I would put. So what column is it? So column is users, right? And then table, right? To table and to table column, right? It says this is where I would put in the table references. So I'm making it so that the table is called user. I think this is username actually. Username, and this is username. I make the same as mine, right? So it's username, user's username, and then this would be username. Yeah, and this wouldn't be thing. It'd probably be varchar. My guess. Let's make it varchar 50, right? And it would be allow nulls. I'm going to allow null so it doesn't crash. Right? So I got a foreign key in here, right? As an example, here it is, right? That's my constraint, and then it says fk to do table, foreign key to do table. If I go to my properties for this one, So, and this is the name, FK to do table. That's what my constraint is. That's my foreign key. Okay, so let's leave it alone. Let's see what happens. So I want to update now my script if I've done things correctly. And it says, this is what it says. Hey, look at this. It says the reference table DBO users contains no primary or candidate keys that match the referencing column list in the foreign key. So I could base it on user ID, right? But that's an issue. That's why it stopped debugging here. So let's just, for the sake of my sanity, because I'm not going to figure this out right now. I know there's a little bit of thing I'm forgetting as well. I'm going to click update, and we're going to add it in as a username right now. We can always change it later on. Right? So if you notice, it comes up with a it's preparing to update. I'm going to click update database in a second. And I'd like to tell you that this is fast. You know, faster at home. Actually, really depends on Azure, how much load it's got on. My connection, I'm using a VM. Maybe yours is faster than me. But me, it takes me quite a long time. Is yours done? No. Yeah, yours takes some time too. So it's going to update the scripts. What was that?
Fast.
Wonderful, I love it. Right? So it's going to do its thing online. It's going to prepare the update script, and I'm going to update my table. And when I do that, I'm going to create my model, and this is the way we do it, right? And after we create my model, I scaffold my model into a to-dos section, right? Let's just cancel and try again. Sometimes it just doesn't do it. If you notice, the update didn't take. And I'm just going to save that thing as in my OneDrive doc, just in case I need to access it again. Yep. Let's try it again. It's just my Azure, or my thing. So there it is. Yay! Finally created it and update complete. So now I've got my table. It's called. It should not be called table. Please don't say it's table. It should be called to-dos, right? So let's just unpin this thing, for example, and let's just to see the table. Yeah, it's to-do. That's good. I'm going to refresh my table list and check it out. And then that should eliminate my issue. I'm going to kind of close this off. There's my to-do table. Yay, I've got my to-do table. That's good. Now that I've got my to-do table, I can do the next piece. See if I can get this done in 10 minutes, right, or so. I'm going to go hide this piece as well. Go into my Solution Explorer and pin this up. And this is all being recorded, the great thing is, right? So I'm going to go right-click on Models. Remember this piece? Right-click on Models. I'm going to go Add, and I'm going to go Add ADO.NET Entity Data Model. That's what I need to do now. Here's my Entity Data Model. I'm going to call this my To-Do Model. To-Do Model, right? It's going to be, I'm going to use EF Designer from Database. Click Next. Now, here's the challenge. Look at this. I have my default connection string. What's that default connection string, guys and girls? It's not what I want. I want a new connection string here, right? So I want a new connection string. Come on. There it is. And what I want to do is I want to put in this database.net thing, right? And I want to pick the right one. So I'm going to say MO, mine's 06, ufct7.database.windows.net, and then click this for user authentication, and save my password. I'm going to pick my database if I did it right, which is this one. I'm going to press OK. When I do that, it's going to give me the ability to save my password, so I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to change this, right, to COMP2007 connection. Just that's what my thing is called, or to-do connection. Will be probably something else. To-do connection. That's what it is. Default connection, to-do connection, whatever. Next, it's going to ask me what I want to include in my to-do connection. It's going to go to the table, right? And my database is going to show a bunch of tables. I don't want the other ones. I just want this one, to-do, right? And it's going to go into COMP2007 Lesson 10 model and press Finish. And when I do that, it's going to go through the rigmarole of including my entity framework in my application. It's going to be packaged in automatically through NuGet Package Manager, right? And once it's done that, it'll create my model diagram. It'll also create my model. Then I can scaffold my model. I have 5 minutes. Let's see if I can do it all in 5 minutes. And put it up on Azure, right? And modify my nav. It's not going to happen, right? But this is the stuff. And it takes long. If you notice, it takes a bit of time to get all this stuff done. That's why I'm talking, for no reason. But when this is done, the great thing is I've now added in what I'm protecting. What am I protecting? Okay, good. Here I am. I'm getting there. And let's see if this is done. There it is. There's my model. I don't need this anymore. And I can kind of skim down on this stuff. What I do need is to do a couple things here. And here's my to-do right here. And I want to just kind of hide these things and hide this thing for a second. This is what my to-do looks like right now, right? ID, string, name, username. Well, I don't want it to say, this is fine. Name, description, and username is okay. But username shouldn't say username, like one like that. It should say username. Like I want it to be lowercase username, right? So how do I change that? Well, I can use my the stuff that I asked you to do on your exam, which is display, right? And then name, right, is equal to username, like lowercase, so username. That's what I wanted to display. Well, the reason why it's giving me an issue is because I don't have display. I'm going to click Control. I'm going to click Control dot, and it's going to bring me up this using system component model data annotations, which I actually do on your exam for a bonus. Some of you did it. And what this does is it'll add the using statement in here, so I can actually change my username. And I can also add required. So I can say, for example, my name is required. So I can make sure that it's not going to allow me to add a to-do without making it required. Okay, good. So that's done. That's my model. Now let's scaffold. So I'm going to go Solution Explorer, Tab. All right, here's my models. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on my project. I'm going to go Add, New Scaffolded Item. For this to work, you should have had web scaffold, that web form scaffolding piece in, right? And you'll get this web forms pages using entity framework. I'm press add. And now I'm going to choose my model class, which is this one, my to-do, right? And I'm going to choose my context class, which is this one, the to-do. It's going to use my default master pages, right? And I'm going to press add. Now, if I did everything right, it should do that scaffolding piece. It's going to create my own folder, which is the secure area that I don't want anyone to go into. I only want my, when I'm logged in, I'm going to be able to get to it. Okay, it's going to do the scaffolding thing in a second. I can't believe it. I might be on time to finish everything. Whew, look at all this stuff, right? Don't need any of it right now. And I do have this to-dos with an OES. Don't know why I did that. Not going to rename this, though, because this is a pain in the arse to do. But it does have, if you notice, a bunch of these other things. I do want to get to this default ASPX page. That's where it's going to go. And I'm going to get there by changing some of this stuff. So first of all, let's go into my default master. And if you notice in my navigation, I said I kind of thought it was going to be down here in my private nav. I want to go to to-dos, but it's actually to-dos, like this, I believe, is how it looks. Let's take a look. Here's to-dos, right? Default ASPX. So that's one thing I got to change. Also, I think I did the same thing with my login. So let's take a look at my login. Right? Right now, it goes to my destination page URL is this default, but I wanted to get to my to-dos page. Right? So I'm going to go to to-dos. Right? Default ASPX. That's where it's going to go for my default. Right? That's my destination page. And the same thing goes with my register page. I'm going to go to my register page for a second. Here's my register ASPX page. And I'll do the same thing here. I'll say, well, you know, my on complete, right? I don't want it to take me to my continue would take me to instead of my default ASPX page, it'll actually log me in. So it'll actually take me to where it's supposed to take me, which is to-dos default ASPX. That's what it's going to do there. Okay, and also just to try it out, let's just try this out locally first. See if it actually took. Okay, so I'm not logged in. Oh, and look where it took me to. It took me to my register page. Let's go back out to log in. And I'm going to log in as me. If I've logged in properly and click log in, it should take me into, this is local login now, right? It's not like online. It should take me to my to-do list. There's my to-do list. Now this to-do list is Azure to-do list, right? It's connected to Azure. So if I do something here, we should see it on the global Azure says. Let's create a new to-do. And my new to-do name is going to be called must finish class on time, right? And click insert. That's all I need because I don't need the other ones. The other ones are optional, right? And there's my to-do, my first to-do. I can go into my details and it can show me my description, my name, back. So this all works. My to-do list is in. And the only way I'm in here is because I'm logged in. See, I'm logged in, which is a good thing. Okay, cool. I want to change a couple more things, right? So let's us log out, first of all. Now it shows me log in, but look where I am. When I log out, it shouldn't just take me here to my default to-dos. It's got to take me, look what it took me. It's got to take me out. So that's another thing it's got to do. So when I log out, that's another issue. I shouldn't be able to see this page. I should be able to say, in fact, if anything, it should secure this page. How do I secure all those pages? Because right now, they ain't secure. Well, I got to do it here. I'm going to stop debugging. So before I go to Azure, I'm almost done. And I want to go and pin this thing up. I want to go to my web config. And I want to unpin this now. And all the way down to the bottom, right, I want to add in, before the configuration is over, something called location. So I'm going to go location tag, and my path, with a path of to-dos, that means the whole folder, right? I want to add in a system.web layer, and inside there I want to add in a authentication layer. If you notice up here, it wasn't, this is authentication. Actually, it's authorization is what I want, not authentication. Authorization. Right? Let's try that again, because it doesn't have the IntelliSense that I want. Authorization. And in my authorization, I want to say that I want to deny users that aren't authenticated. That's the script. So that means anytime a user goes on that's not authenticated, it'll bounce me out into login. It won't allow me to log in unless I'm authenticated. It won't allow me to get there. Let's try this out and see if it works. So I'm here, and I'm going to try and go to my home page. It takes me to login. Because I'm not logged in. I log in, right? I can go to my name, password, right? Log in. It's going to take me to my to-dos page, right? Let's see if it works. Yes, here's my to-dos page. Nope. Right? When I log out, it bounces me out back into login now because it won't allow me to get into that folder at all. Even if I want to go there manually, it won't be allowing me to do that. Right now, if you notice, it gets me to my default, right? It gives me my default, and I want to kill that functionality because I had put that in as a stopgap, right? So when I go to my Solution Explorer, and I want to be able to get to my default at some point. I can't get to my default page yet because I've stopped me from doing it, right? And here it is. It says, if my user is not authenticated, bounce me back to login. I don't want that. I want to always be able to get to my default page. I'm going to take that out. And then let's see if that works now. I'm almost there. So here's my default page, which my Jumbotron, I now have full functionality. I can't get into my, if I go and put in here to-dos, which I know exists, if I'm a user, here's to-dos, it's going to bounce me into login. It won't allow me to get in there, right? If I go log in, and if I go put in my name and password, I did it properly and click login, it logs me in and takes me to my to-do list. Here's my to-do list, right? And if I log out, it passes me back into my login screen. Okay? Okay, cool. So all this is good. Now, the big test. For the final, right? For the A plus, Tom, right? Make it work on Azure. Let's see how this works, guys. Remember what I got to do in Azure. I got to make all my changes go on Azure. I got to make my entity framework work on Azure. I've got to make my whole scaffold that I just created work on Azure. So let's check this out. So I'm going to go right-click, publish, and press publish. If everything goes well, and if I did everything correctly, then we're good to go. If I didn't do things correctly, and this is the struggle, this is what took me like a couple days to get through, right? Then it'll crash when I go into one of my pages, when I go into my to-dos, right? Here's my web app. I'm logged out, so I'm already logged in. Let me log out because it kept many things. So I'm going to log in as normal. So I'm going to go, now I'm online. I recommend, try this out. Go to COMP2007, azurewebsites.net, and log in. Create a registration. You can do that now too. And I'm going to go here and add in your own to-do. That should take me to my to-do page if I did everything right. Come on, to-do page. If I didn't do everything right, it's going to choke. Yay, we're good. This time I'll remember. Go ahead, add another to-do. And let's see if your to-do persists. I want to see that happen. Let's see if your to-do persists. Go on there, register for yourself. It's a live app. You should be able to get in there, register, and add your own to-do. Now remember, what we want to do eventually is we have to change the model so that the only to-dos that are shown are your own to-dos, not my to-dos. Only shows users to-do, where we match your username with everything else. You're good?
Yep.
So let me try this out. Let me refresh if you added things into me. I should be able to see my to-do list. Kill Robin, right? Robin must kill Robin. Robin kill. I didn't put that in. Someone else put that in, right? So I see that there's people are using my database, right? No problem. Let's see if there's anyone else that added anything else in there, right? Here's one thing where, to me, where I really like it. You can also kill other people's to-dos, right? Because my to-dos and your to-dos are the same. You can go in there. You have the same control. This is what I'm saying. You should only be able to see and manage your own, not mine, right? So how do we manage that? And that's a tale for another time. So we've run out of time now. And how do I style my pages so they look a little nicer? That's another tale for another time, because we run out of time. But you've got the basics of authentication. I think from here on in you can do other more advanced stuff, to make this go. But I think from this we kind of mission accomplished. And if you notice, we did all that. Everything's live on Azure, which is where we want to go with your final project. Remember, your final project, your first piece of your final project, which is your sitemap. And also, your lab number 2 is due tomorrow. Lab 2 was your costing. Remember, I asked you for costing. That's part that's due tomorrow. And your that's with you and your partner. As an example, you kind of have to submit that. And please submit who your partner is. Let me know so I can create the group. That would be good too. And then your concept. Maybe talk to me about your concept with your sitemap. Say, here, by the way, Tom, my concept is so-and-so. And this is the first piece that I'm going to submit online, because you can make multiple submissions within your on Blackboard, right? And then in, I believe, 2 weeks from now, you're going to have your final due, which is we're in week 10, week 11, week 12. I think it's due week 13. You actually have 3 more weeks to get it all done, because it's due just before the end of semester, before exam. So there's going to be the final exam is going to be on the final week, week 14, but your final project will be due on week 13. Okay, so and we'll do our presentations on the Thursday, like today, before your final project is due, just like normal. Any questions? Yes.
So the lab is just the work we have to do in hours, the breakdown?
The hours and who your partner is, that kind of stuff would be nice to see, like who's doing what. I think what I'd like to see. So if you're working with somebody else, are you working with anybody else?
Yeah.
So you and your partner would have to have a breakdown of who's doing what,
Okay.
right? So let's say, if you have 30 hours each, I'm putting it out there, right? I don't know how many hours. That's too many, but let's say 30 hours each, right? Then you would say, okay, well, I'm, Jeremy's doing this and Red's doing this.
How'd you know?
I'm just guessing. And then Kelly and Spencer, they're working together. I'm just guessing. And then Kelly's doing this and Spencer's doing this, right? So that's the kind of stuff. And Shandan and Karan, Shannon's doing this and Karan's doing this, right? What are they doing? If you don't have these things, then you won't get full marks in your lab. Okay, please do that.
Can make your changes?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. I will commit my changes. Yes, I will. So in order for me to do that again, I'm going to just undo this one, go to Team Explorer. I'm going to go to Home, Changes, and look at all these things I made. I scaffolded a whole new section, added to-dos, module, and EF framework with model class. There we go, big one. Home, unsync commits, sync. Obviously, we'd make many more commits than this to GitHub. It's all there for you, Kelly.
Thank you.
And that's it for me, guys. See you next week.